Glock handguns have been around for quite a while, and I have my share of them, in various sizes and calibers. For subcompact Glock pistols, I have the G26, a .45 ACP pistol, a Glock 26, a 9mm Glock pistol, and the G42, a .380 ACP pistol. 3 subcompact Glock pistols are missing from my collection: the G33, a .357 SIG pistol, the G39, a .45 GAP pistol, and the G27, a .40 Smith Wesson pistol. The 2 former pistols I have no interest in, but because I have the G22 and G23 and .40 Smith & Wesson, the latter of the 3, the G27, does interest me for subcompact carry, as I have grown to like the .40 Smith & Wesson cartridge. My local gun club and range just happens to have a Glock 27 among the rental firearms, and I thought, what an opportune time to try it out to see if it is worthy of my consideration. And I thought of yours. Let's take a look at the basics first, and then go from there. The Glock 27 is simply a scaled-down version of the Glock 22 and Glock 23. Uses the same ammunition as the larger pistols and can also use the same magazines for higher capacities. The Glock 27 was intended for those who carried the Glock 22 and who needed a backup weapon in the same caliber as their duty pistol, or as an off-duty piece. Anyone familiar with any Glock can be brought up to speed on the Glock 27 in a short amount of time. The loading, chambering, firing, and clearing processes are all exactly the same, as is the takedown and reassembly procedure. As far as caliber, the .40 Smith & Wesson cartridge, developed as an alternative to the more powerful 10mm cartridge, has fallen out of favor by most, with many returning to the 9mm cartridge due to less felt recoil, advances in the 9mm cartridge's ballistics, and of course, cost per round. The subcompact Glock 27 remains, however, a possible choice for personal self-defense for those who favor the .40 Smith & Wesson cartridge. According to Glock, there are only 3 variations of the Glock 27, the Gen 3, the Gen 4 law enforcement only, and the Gen 5, of which the version I am evaluating is. Let's take a closer look at it. All polymer-framed handguns, including the Glock until the Gen 4 models, have been hampered in terms of tuning the grip to the shooter. Handguns with removable grip panels have always allowed the shooter to easily exchange factory grips for grips that better suited him or her. The only option polymer-framed handgun owners had were rubber sleeves that could be pulled over the grip that added a better gripping surface and sometimes finger grooves. The modular backstrap system is a much better solution that began, for Glock, with the Gen 4 series. More on that later. This Glock 27, being a Gen 5 version, does have improvements over the previous versions. The front end of the slide is nicely beveled for easier insertion into a holster. The barrel, a Glock marksman barrel, is nicely crowned. The front sight on this unit is the usual Glock polymer white dot sight and sits atop a slide that has forward serrations. front slide serrations do have an advantage over a slide without them, and I'll get into that in a moment. Coming in at 1.08 inches, the slide of the Gen 5 is slightly wider than the Gen 3 and Gen 4 versions with a 1.0 inch slide. That increased slide width needs to be taken into account if a holster is to be purchased for the Gen 5. The ejection port is typical Glock, and the extractor not only serves to extract shells, but also has a loaded chamber indicator that is both visual and tactile. The extractor pops out when the chamber is loaded. The usual rear slide serrations are present and, as usual, provides a good gripping surface. Some folks with compromised hand strength may elect to use the front slide serrations when moving the slide to the rear, or when releasing the slide. Thus the reason for the front slide serrations. It needs to be noted that the captivated recoil assembly spring rate is on the heavy side and may not appeal to some. The rear sight is also the standard polymer white outline that some like and some hate. Personally, I have no issues with stock Glock polymer sights, as they serve their purpose of lining up things for shooting. You might note that this version is not MOS ready. The frame has no accessory rail, which is a feature not needed on a pistol this size, and for the purposes of which it would probably be used, up close and personal defense, whether it be a primary carry or backup pistol. The slide lock assembly is typical Glock, small and a pain in the butt to use when disassembly of a Glock is necessary, but it can serve as a finger rest without concerning oneself with accidentally releasing the slide. The Gen 5 G27 does have an ambidextrous slide stop lever. Note that while an overhand or rear hold slingshot method is favored for releasing the slide, slide stop can be used to release the slide by pressing it down using the sport hand thumb, shooting hand thumb, or shooting hand trigger finger or middle finger, with somewhat of an effort. Note that the Glock 27 is a 2-pin unit, the same as its larger brothers. The trigger housing is undercut at the rear for the highest handhold on the grip as possible, and you will need every bit of that short grip. The front of the trigger housing is squared off and serrated for those who like to use the front of the trigger guard as a finger hold when firing the pistol. The magazine catch is typically on the left side, but can be changed to work on the right side for left-hand users, or those right-hand operators who would like to release a magazine with their index finger. The grip texture is the same as that found on all Gen 5 Glock pistols, and is very good at digging into the hand to provide a secure grip. All Glock Gen 5 pistols come with grip adapters, and the G27 Gen 5 is no exception. 4 adapters are provided, 2 with beaver tail extensions and 2 without beaver tail extensions. I prefer the thickest adapter with beaver tail extension, as it affords me to be able to get as high on the grip as possible. But this range rental unit has no grip adapter installed. I'll have to deal with that during the range session. I don't have an issue with the grip width, as I find it adequate. Grip length, however, falls short, literally, in my hand. As with my G26 and 36, my little finger is left hanging, and I really like using my little finger when gripping, especially with a pistol this size and with a powerful cartridge that it shoots. I had put magazine extensions on my G36, but the extensions slapped my little finger so hard that they became bothersome, and were removed. With the recoil characteristics of the Glock 27, I would expect the same, and will simply place the little finger beneath the magazine floor plate during the range session. I'll let you know how that worked out when the time comes. The standard Glock 27 magazine capacity is 9 rounds, but the Glock 27 can also use larger capacity 13-round G23 or 15-round G22 magazines. Also, plus magazine extensions are available to provide a +1 or +2 increase in capacity. The trigger pull is typical Glock, soft to the touch but predictable. The trigger pull weight of this Glock 27 came in at a little over 5 pounds. Is the Glock trigger exceptional? No, but it is usable and manageable. Not much more can be said about the Glock 27's features. In appearance, it is the typical Glock subcompact pistol, but in this case, chambered for a mighty powerful cartridge. You will see how that translates during the range session, but for now, let me address maintenance. With most being familiar with Glock pistols, how they disassemble and reassemble, I'm going to forego maintenance, except to mention that you should follow the instructions and recommendations found in the manufacturer's manual for the firearm, or for that matter, any firearm. I am interested, as I think you are, in how the G27 would compare with the Glock 26 and 36, and I will pass on what I learned to you. I will tell you, as you will witness, the terms pocket rocket and hand cannon come to mind. With me today, I have some 180 grain Speer Lawman TMJ, which I will start with, and a sampling of Nosler 180 grain jacketed hollow point rounds for defensive load evaluation. Obviously, these are only a small sampling of 40 Smith Wesson ammunition currently available. It should be enough for you and I to figure out what the Glock 27 is going to tell us. While I would like to send some 165 grain critical defense downrange, that is reserved for my carry Gen 5 Glock 23, and which does well in my Glock 22, and also in a Springfield Armory XD40. So let me get to it, and in my usual fashion, I'll make comments as I progress, and also provide a brief synopsis at session's end. my first range day with a Glock 27, I think it went quite well. To answer a quick question regarding comparing the Glock 27 to a Glock 26 and 36, I'll just say that the felt recoil is snappier than with a 26, about the same with the 36, but more pop than push in the hand. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised with the handling of the 27. Someone once said that anticipation of death is worse than death itself. In this case, that applies to felt recoil. I was expecting more felt recoil than what I actually felt. The 27 does a good job of soaking up and distributing the recoil. Granted that I was wearing a wrist brace for my CTS that does help deal with felt recoil, but I am experienced enough to know if felt recoil is abusive. Yep, the Glock 27 can be a hit to the hand, but no worse than other pistols that I have fired. In a defensive situation, you probably would not even notice it. My little finger did get stung a couple of times with it being rested against the bottom of the magazine. When I loosened the tension between the little finger and magazine floor plate, I did not experience any stinging. I had to shift 90% of my grip to my two other fingers. The Glock 27 ran as I would expect from a fired many times Glock. Perfectly. No failures of any kind, except for the occasional errors by the operator when rushing shots. Trigger pulls actually felt good on this pistol. Although a typical Glock trigger, I felt no heaviness with it as I have with some. As usual, the stock Glock polymer sights were adequate for my old eyes to line up. At the distance I was shooting, the standard combat distance, sights lined up on target easily. I must be getting used to shooting Glock pistols. Maybe too much. I did use the front slide serrations once to close the slide, and it did seem that I had better leverage on the slide than from approaching it from the rear. For folks with compromised hand strength, using the front slide serrations may be the way to go. Regarding the grip, I thought that I would have an issue with not having a grip adapter installed, but I didn't. If this pistol were mine, I would probably have the thickest grip adapter with beaver tail installed. With a beaver tail grip adapter, it seems that I can get my hand higher on the grip. Whether it improves my shooting is questionable. I can miss my target with or without a grip adapter. Looking at the target, I think that the Glock 27 and I did well for the first time out. I did put a couple of body shots higher than the rest, but they still would have been effective on a live target. Headshots were pretty easy to line up, and I was pulling to the right just a wee tad. Nonetheless, all headshots were where they needed to be. By session's end, I was feeling a bit more confident about the Glock 27. Is it a keeper? You will have to wait until my final thoughts for that question to be answered. For now, let me address carrying and concealing this little hand cannon. Two considerations for carrying the Glock 27 are the slide width and the carry method. The slide width is a tad greater than the Gen 3 and Gen 4 variants, and when selecting holsters for the Glock 27, this needs to be kept in mind. I like carrying in a shoulder rig these days, but also like cross-draw carry. For me, I have 3 holsters that serves these methods of carry. All holsters were ordered for a Glock 23 Gen 5 that also has the wider slide width, and the Glock 27 would fall right into place in any of these holsters. The Glock 27 provides compact firepower for the .40 Smith Wesson cartridge, and for those who need it in a simple, extremely reliable package to shoot it. Although it may not have the magazine capacity of larger pistols, it can also quietly go where other pistols cannot. For those that require such a pistol in .40 Smith & Wesson, the Glock 27 may just fit the bill. The caveat is that the Glock 27 comes with a punch to the hand that many will not appreciate. I would say that this would be cause for most to say, "No thank you, I'll stick or go with the Glock 26. Well, I can't say that I blame anyone for that. You get one more round in the magazine, more magazine capacity options, and less felt recoil, which translates into better control, faster follow-up shots, etc. I won't say accuracy or precision, because those are in the hands of the individual operator. At the beginning of this review, I said that I would reveal whether the Glock 27 was going to be a consideration for me to purchase. Under a stress situation, a firearm that is manageable is very important. The Glock 26 is very manageable. The Glock 36 is on the borderline of being manageable. The Glock 27 steps over that borderline, and for me, that's a step too far. I do carry a Glock 23 during the colder weather, and it is one that can be buried under several layers of clothing, evading detection. The Glock 23 is very manageable, although a tad on the snappy side, but still manageable. I am no longer considering the Glock 27 for a personal defense companion, although for some, it just may be the right pistol for either a primary or backup firearm. We all have individual preferences, likes and dislikes. I am just exercising my individual preference, and I'll leave you with that thought. Alright, let's say I close this chapter of the Range Ronin Chronicles. I am glad you decided to make it to the channel and watch the video. Comment if you like, share it if you care to, and subscribe if you wish.